The Mediterranean Sea is a body of water sandwiched between the three continents of the ancient world, Africa, Asia, and Europe, with an area of more than 2 million square kilometers. Its great strategic value. Geological structure: the Mediterranean Sea consists of two main basins separated by a rocky chain known as the Sicilian Tunisian Cell, the depth of which does not exceed 400 meters. Compared to 4,000 meters is the average depth in the eastern and western basins. The length of this threshold is 140 kilometers and its borders are Cape Bon in Sicily and Messala in Tunisia. The western basin is connected to the Atlantic Ocean through the Strait of Gibraltar, which separates Africa from Europe and narrows is the areas of the Moroccan city of Tangiers until the distance between the Moroccan and Spanish coasts is barely 14 kilometers, with a depth of between 100 and 1,500 meters. The western basin opens is the north to the Tyrrhenian Sea, sandwiched between the Balkans and the islands of Corsica and Sardinia. In this region stands the Volcano mountain range, characterized by a water depth of more than 3,700 meters, while the depth of the water decreases to the west towards the Spanish Balearic Island to be within 2,800 meters. As for the eastern basin, it extends from the Tunisian Sicily threshold in the west to the shores of the Levant in the east. It can be divided into two basins, the western of which is called the Ionian Basin, relative to the Ionian Sea bordering the Balkans, and the second is called the Levantine Basins. The eastern basin is characterized by the presence of a rocky chain extending from Calabria in southern Italy to the island of Cyprus, with a length of 1,900 kilometers and a width of 200 kilometers, and this chain ends in the south with a steep plain into which the Nile River flows. The water depth in this basin ranges between 3,000 and 5,000 meters. The Mediterranean Sea represents 1% of the total area of water bodies in the world. It extends east and north due to the slope of the Adriatic Sea between Italy and the Balkans. It also extends to the northeast through the Bosporus and Dardanelles Strait to reach the edges of the Black Sea, which geologists consider part of the Mediterranean and an extension of it. Geophysically, the Mediterranean is characterized by the steep slope of its plains from the beaches to the depth of the water, as the water depth levels vary greatly between the coasts and the nearby areas, and geologists explain this phenomenon by the fact that most of the coasts of this sea are mountainous. History and risks. The Mediterranean Sea is closely linked to the history of human civilizations, as it is adjacent to the land of the heavenly messages located to the east of it, and the oldest human civilizations were established around it, such as the Babylonian, Assyrian, Egyptian, Greek, Persian, Roman, and Islamic civilizations, and the Western civilization that leads the world today. Thus, the Mediterranean remained for centuries the center of the world and almost the only prosperous commercial and strategic sea, given the limited global trade and the weakness of the means of maritime transport in ancient history, and also because the sea mediated the continents of the ancient world. The Mediterranean has acquired great strategic importance since the dawn of history, and its straits, Gibraltar, the Bosphorus, and the Dardanelles have remained the subject of conflict between countries and nations seeking to control the world. It made historians and sociologists call it the center of the world. With the discovery of the New World, North and South Americas, at the end of the 50th century AD, the importance of the Mediterranean increased despite its small area, and it became the truly center of the world, especially with the flourishing of international trade, especially after after the completion of the drilling of the Suez Canal 8069 AD, which ensured communication nautical between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. The strategic importance of the Mediterranean still exists despite the development of transportation and the prosperity of distant parts of the world, such as the Americas, Asia, and Australia. More than 30% of the ships in the world seas sail in the Mediterranean Basin, and 40% of the oil tankers pass through it. Due to its proximity to the Middle East, which exports more than 70% of the world's oil and gas, Mediterranean countries attract more than 200 million visitors annually. On the strategic level, all major powers are seeking to gain a foothold in the Mediterranean, whether by setting up a military base, a space control center, or an eavesdropping center for espionage. The Mediterranean Basin is considered one of the most environmentally diverse regions in the world, while the Mediterranean climate is the most moderate climate in the world and suitable for commercial and productive activities, due to its moderate temperature, balanced seasons, and average rainfall rates. However, the Mediterranean faces the risk of pollution. A study completed in 2050 indicated that it contains more than 2,050 billion pieces of plastic that are tossed by waves and ocean currents, and some of them pushing its depth, which poses a real threat to the marine environment due to the severity of plastic pollution to nature and the long period spanned, which range between 400 and 1,000 years. The Mediterranean also suffers from pollution caused by the passage of oil tankers, as these huge ships unload more than 200,000 tons of fuel on the shores of the Mediterranean every year. Wikitube, the first audiovisual encyclopedia in the English language.